went in there, laid a couple guys out, and did what I had to do. But the funniest part about it, was gonna make all y'all laugh, we get in the locker room, and we sitting there, my legs all scratched up from hopping over the bleachers. Ron sitting there calming down. His first question to me, do you think we gonna get in trouble? You know my reply? You lucky we have a job. He asked me that, and the whole locker room was like, no, Ron, you serious? Trouble? We passed trouble. We passed trouble. We finna get kicked out the league.
Welcome back to Ball Don't Lie here on Penn State Sports Night. As you are probably wondering, why am I in a storage closet? It's a great question. There was a bit of a scheduling conflict that me and Matt were unaware of. He's currently in the studio, though. I am not, but hopefully I migrate over there, Matt, because I miss seeing you through the window.
Yeah, I miss seeing you too, man. This is, yes, for the first time in 6 months, somebody has the TV studio occupied, and it's just 2 other people. So hopefully they get out of here soon. You see Hunter not in front of storage boxes.
Yeah, this is a weird one right now. Hopefully the podcast isn't as weird as this is currently going on right now. But we have breaking news right before we started recording. Thank God, because I feel like all these Woj bombs, these sham alerts, they all happen after the podcast or something like that. But DeMarcus Cousins, pending health and safety protocols and passing that kind of stuff, plans to sign with the LA Clippers, Matt. What's your thoughts on that? This is raw reactions here because we just found this out.
Yeah, I think it's a good fit. I think they needed a big man. I think they were in the market for Andre Drummond, I believe. So I think this is probably their next best option, even though it definitely wasn't their first option. DeMarcus Cousins has been out of the game for about a month or 2, I think. So I think it could be a good signing, but I'm not sure how much he'll actually play for the Clippers. I think he might be just a situation where he's on the end of the bench, and if they absolutely need him, he can play. But I'm not sure how much he'll make an impact there.
Yeah, it's a low risk, high reward move for the Clippers because they already got Serge Ibaka there. They have Ivica Zubac. They're pretty confident in those 2 guys. DeMarcus Cousins brings something a little different. Of course, probably the most talented offensive player of the 3. He's a really good passer at the position as well. He can score in the low post. He can shoot threes. So he brings him a little bit of versatility that you don't really have out of a big man there. And if he doesn't play well, I mean, that's okay. They're already a pretty good team that's already one of the contenders anyway. So I'm fine with them rolling the dice here.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously little risk involved in signing a guy who's going to make a vet minimum contract who has been bouncing around the league for the past couple of years now, it seems.
Yeah. So yeah, that broke right before we got here. But something really interesting happened yesterday. I'm glad it wasn't as dangerous as it could have been because I saw pictures of it leaked today, and they were not pretty at all, man. I don't know if you saw them either, but the Utah Jazz, they were traveling to Memphis to play the Memphis Grizzlies, of course, yesterday. But the plane that they were on underwent an emergency landing after hitting a flock of birds. Took off from Salt Lake City International Airport, and they, I believe what happened was the left engine shut down. I'm guessing that's where, the point of attack was, if you will, for lack of a better term. Thank God, though, no injuries were reported. The plane did land safely, and everyone was safe. But this was a weird one, Matt. A really weird story to, I guess, start off this strange podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures right now because I hadn't seen them. These are pretty brutal, honestly. I guess the planes or the birds flew into the engine. That's I'm sorry, it's not funny. Yeah, I'm glad they avoided some serious disaster. Could you imagine if that had happened? The NBA, this would be officially the strangest NBA year ever if that had happened. But obviously they avoided great disaster, which is good.
Yeah, I don't know how high this plane was that the flock of birds were there. So I saw a comment on Twitter saying, like, was it like they hit a pterodactyl? Like the plane looks like destroyed. Like you see like
Yeah.
blood everywhere. Like it's nasty. Like it's Thank God no one got hurt. And then we can laugh this one off a little bit. Shout out to I don't know the name of the people who were flying the plane. But shout out to them having a nice safe landing there. And avoiding tragedy. Thank God. But speaking of tragedy or, greatness, the highs and lows of Russell Westbrook, of course, like we always talk about here on this podcast, he definitely had a high, though. He became the 3rd player in NBA history to have 30 points, 20 assists, and 10 rebounds in a game, only behind Oscar Robertson and Magic Johnson. Magic did congratulate him on Twitter as well. Dropped 35, 21, and 14 in a win over Indiana. That is a monster game, Matt. I don't know if it's because he cut his hair off, but Russell Westbrook's been hooping recently. But at the same time, though, it seems like the Wizards haven't figured it out. But I guess when we can be nice to Westbrook, we might as well, because we are unbiased here on Ball Don't Lie.
Yeah, Hunter, I'm glad you brought up the haircut because it seems like once he shaved his head, he went back to MVP prime Russell Westbrook. But I haven't slandered him in a while, so I guess that explains his recent outburst. He had a great dunk last night too on Bismack Biyombo, even though the game was already over at that point. The Wizards did lose that game. Like you said, the Wizards have not figured it out in terms of wins and losses, but Russell Westbrook is really starting to play better.
He has, and he's probably going to be there for the next couple years or so, along with Bradley Beal, if he doesn't ask for a trade. So it's good that he's starting to kind of get acclimated there. They got two great players, and if they can build around that, they have the potential. We just got to wait and see. Speaking of triple-double machines, though, James Harden has recorded 12 triple-doubles in just 38 games with the Brooklyn Nets. That already ties Jason Kidd for most single-season triple-doubles in their franchise's history. He had 12 in 2006-2007, and in the 2007-2008 season. James Harden, you talk about a guy of that magnitude getting traded that early in the season. We've really never seen it like that. And now he's in the MVP conversation. No Kevin Durant there. He's kind of become the main guy. Kyrie even said himself that James Harden's our point guard now. We're putting the ball in his hands. With Embiid's injury, with LeBron's injury, is James Harden the front runner to win MVP right now?
Well, he certainly thinks so, but I don't agree with it. I think he's obviously having a great season. There's nothing to take away from him. I just think other guys like Nikola Jokic having a better season. I think even if Embiid comes back, is supposedly going back on Saturday, if he finishes the season the way he's been playing all year, I think he still has the nod over James Harden, because I think, especially in the NBA, they try to give MVPs to players who haven't necessarily won it yet. Especially if it's like a notable guy. Voter fatigue is definitely a real thing too, and Harden has been in the conversation the last couple of years. I'm not saying this is my opinion, but it seems like from the voters' perspective, they do try to get the guys who aren't necessarily the guys that get it every year. So Giannis probably won't win another one. Harden probably won't win another one just because of those reasons. And has anyone ever won an MVP while being traded mid-season? I don't think so. There's no way.
Never
Right?
happened. Nope, never happened.
So that would be a first, and that would be quite the storyline, but I just don't think it'll happen.
Yeah, Harden is having a phenomenal season, and with no Kevin Durant there in the Brooklyn Nets dominating the way they have been, I definitely think he has to be in the conversation. It's interesting though that this late in the season, we don't really know who's going to win MVP. It is still up in the air. There's still a lot of guys who can really solidify themselves, which is nuts. And while, yes, voter fatigue is definitely a real thing, I think we need to start talking about Giannis as an MVP candidate. He's having the best year of his career. And this is someone like me who said I didn't think he should have won it last year. But Giannis is having a phenomenal season. The Bucks have lost a couple games recently, but overall been playing very well. I think he needs to be in the conversation more. He's been awesome. But like you said, just because of the fact that he won it back-to-back years, the odds he wins it 3 times in a row are pretty slim.
Yeah, I agree. And, like I said, the NBA just doesn't like to give MVPs, even to those who may deserve it, multiple years in a row. I'm sure that killed them to give it to Giannis 2 years in a row, the past 2 years. But it's kind of interesting that James Harden is just carrying this team. It's because he wasn't on the team to start the roster this season. Obviously, as we talked about, he got traded mid-season over there. And it's crazy to think about where they would be without him, especially with KD out and Kyrie Irving just deciding he doesn't want to play sometimes. So it's interesting. It's really worked out well for the Nets.
Yeah, it has. And they are title contenders because of it. Speaking of another guy they acquired mid-season, Blake Griffin. It was pretty funny because he's been receiving a lot of hate for going to the Brooklyn Nets. And he had a very interesting soundbite here saying, quote, "All I heard for 2 years was how bad I am." So Blake Griffin's an interesting one because he kind of fell off a bit over the last couple of years. He's had some injury issues, although a couple seasons ago he was all NBA and had a career high in points per game. So we talked about Blake Griffin going to the Nets and what that can mean for the team and stuff. But what do you think about what Blake Griffin said here? Does he have a point?
I think he does, especially with players like that who constantly get, trashed on by the national media for maybe not living up to their potential or whatever. He kept the receipts, man. And, one thing about Blake Griffin is that he's going to keep it real, and he doesn't care what you think or of what he says, and he just doesn't care. He's like a kind of guy that kind of is kind of says whatever he wants. You see that in his stand-up comedy career that he's had. He just kind of says whatever he wants, and he feels the way he feels, and he's not gonna, change his opinion for anybody, and he's gonna let you know if he thinks you're wrong, especially if you call him out.
Yeah, Blake Griffin has always kind of kept it real. This is not really related to basketball, but Kyle Pitts ran at 4.44 440 as a tight end. That's ridiculous. Oh my God. Anyways, though, he's gonna be in the NFL draft. We're gonna talk about the NBA draft a little bit here because they announced their dates for some of the key events. The draft lottery will be on June 22nd this year, and there will be a combine. I'm assuming it's gonna be more of an in-person one because last draft it wasn't like that. But the combine is scheduled for June 21st to June 27th, and then draft day July 29th. So it got pushed back a little bit, mainly because of COVID. Of course, the season started a little late. But it's pretty good to see that they already have this stuff planned ahead of time because they really didn't know what they were doing last season after the bubble.
Yeah, it is good to see that they're more on track here in this situation. Obviously, like you said, later than usual because of the late start. They didn't start till December this year. What I'm interested in seeing is maybe this propels them into starting maybe the season a little more on time this year, like in their usual October start, or if they maybe start end of October and maybe November. And another question I had was, when will Summer League be? Because, obviously they didn't have it this past year, or did they just not have it again?
That's a good point. Unless yeah, because summer league normally starts like early July, like right after the draft. Unless it's gonna be like a smaller summer league, and they start in like August, I'm assuming. It's a good point. I mean, when the season does like start in a regular NBA year or regular year in general, it starts like late October. So I guess it's possible. I mean, it's only gonna be the rookies and second year and G League guys that are gonna be in anyway. So, yeah, I always love summer league. It's always accidentally clicked something here. My bad. But summer league is always really fun to watch. I'm as someone who's a basketball nerd, it's definitely one of my favorite things to watch, especially watching young players because I love college basketball and the NBA. So the NBA draft summer league is just the perfect mix between the two.
Yeah, obviously, and there's always been some good summer league moments, even though it's maybe not the most notable players out there on the court. We've seen some good summer league moments. One that comes to mind is Zion ripping the ball away from Mitch Robinson in one of his first summer league games, which is pretty funny. So, yeah, we'll see what happens if summer league happens. Maybe they would bubble that too. I'm not sure, but we'll see where we are with COVID at that point.
It's funny because I remember I used to be so excited to watch summer league for the Lakers because it was basically their starting lineup that was playing.
Yeah.
Because they were so young and like they weren't good at all. But then watching the last couple ones, like since they're actually a good basketball team now, I'm like, this isn't as fun as it used to be.
Yeah. It was the same thing with the Sixers. The process Sixers was basically just their G League lineup or their summer league lineup.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. But speaking of the Los Angeles Lakers, apparently LeBron is trying to recruit Steph Curry at the All-Star game to come to the LA Lakers. It's also worth knowing too, man. We talked about it on this podcast quite a bit. We've been speaking this into existence. Steph Curry is up for a contract extension this offseason. His contract, I believe, ends in 2 years, though.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? I mean, do you think this has any buzz? Do you buy the fact LeBron was trying to sell him on LA? Do you think that Steph Curry would even consider it? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I definitely buy into LeBron, openly tampering. I think that's something he's been known to do for the past couple of years now. In other news, the sky is blue and the grass is green in terms of that. But Steph Curry, I think he would definitely have to be interested with playing with LeBron and AD in Los Angeles. I mean, if he is going to leave the Warriors, he wants to go to a situation where he knows he's going to win, and that would be quite the super team. Even though obviously they would be one of the older super teams ever, I think it would be a pretty lethal super team, especially since Steph Curry is more of a shooter. That tends to last longer in the NBA than guys typically like LeBron, who are more bigger. But obviously LeBron does not fit that mantra. But I think I definitely would buy into that. The only thing I would question is maybe how they'd make that money work, especially since LeBron and Anthony Davis are already on max deals. I don't know if they would be able to sign Steph Curry to the money that he would want, but we'll see.
I think people would have to take pay cuts after that for realistically happening. That's what we saw with the big three in Miami too. Dwayne Wade took some huge pay cuts, and so did Chris Bosh to get LeBron to go there. That would have to be the best big three in NBA history. I mean, you have like essentially prime LeBron, prime Steph, and prime Anthony Davis all on the same team. They're all arguably top 5 NBA players. Their games fit seamlessly next to each other too. They're all not selfish players. They do what it takes to win and do, so many different things on the court. Yeah, it got me all excited.
Hunter's salivating over there.
Yeah, oh my God. If the Lakers got Steph Curry, it's over. There's nothing you can do in the NBA. And then, like, when LeBron retires, like, the Lakers have Steph Curry and Anthony Davis. They're going to get somebody else.
Mhm.
Anyways, though, Dennis Schroeder, though, for the Lakers, turned down a 4-year, $84 million contract. So Lakers are still looking at the short-term plans here because they understand that, they got to you can't look too far ahead. But Dennis Schroeder turned down over $21 million per year, Matt. I don't know about you. I was pretty surprised. Do you see him getting any more money on the market?
No, I was shocked by that. He gets to play with LeBron and AD and make that kind of money, which honestly is probably pretty good for his services. 4 years, $84 million. That's a good commitment, first of all, yearly, and then the $84 million. I don't know how you turn that down, especially with your playing consistently for a championship like he would be in LA. Dennis, baby, what is you doing?
I really do not get it at all. I was so confused. Like I believe he turned it down. The Lakers have been trying to negotiate with him. They actually offered him less money, and I think they offered him 4 years, $64 million. He turned down, and they offered him even more money, a lot more money, and he still said no. Like I don't get that at all. I think that's a very more than fair price for him. He's there for 4 years. I believe he's 26, 27 years old, so he'd be on time with Anthony Davis there. He's probably the best player outside of those two guys. You'd be starting point guard next to two of the best. I do not get this at all. I don't know why you would turn that down. Does he really think he's going to make more money somewhere else and
I
play
mean, he
for
might.
that good of a team?
If he's gonna make more money, it's probably not gonna be for as good of a team. Maybe he'll get a lot of money from Orlando or something. But yeah, I don't really get it either. Maybe he just doesn't want to be on a championship contending team for whatever reason. Some guys are like that. I don't get it. Um, yeah, that's a lot of money to turn down to be on a championship contending team. Maybe he sees the writing on the wall with Steph Curry. Maybe he doesn't want to be a backup, but I don't know, man. That's definitely confusing to me.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I don't know. Anyways though, shout out to Karl Anthony Towns here. This is a guy who has quite literally been through it during this whole pandemic. His father as well as other family members, they were able to go to the Minnesota Timberwolves last game. A lot of these teams are due to COVID restrictions being lifted to an extent, have been able to have fans, or especially these family members and players, coaches, stuff like that, including his father. And in case you don't know Karl Anthony Towns' story, his mother, Jackie Towns, unfortunately passed from COVID earlier this year. And I got to shout out him because, he has really been going through it. Towns individually has had an awesome season, but the Timberwolves not as much. But after the game, he said, quote, "It was really the first time having family watch me play in person. And it's crazy seeing my dad. I was like, where's mom? She's going to come. And obviously she's not going to show up." So shout out to Karl Anthony Towns for persevering. He has, gone on record and talked about this and stuff. This pandemic has not been easy on anybody. So, if you have family and stuff like that, be sure to appreciate them.
Yeah, obviously he's one of like you said, everybody's been affected by the pandemic, but it seems like he was probably the one that maybe got hit hard the most, especially in a public community setting. It's still amazing to me how he continued to ball after losing 7 family members to the virus and after getting it himself too, and he missed I think 13 games with the virus. Even just the mental situation after knowing what has happened to your family and then you contract the virus as well, that's got to be scary. It's a testament to his character that he's been able to continue to ball. I wish the rest of the Timberwolves were that good.
Yeah, shout out Karl Anthony Towns. Hopefully he can win some games with whatever organization in the near future. Prayers are up to him and his family. Anyways, though, we talked about Russell Westbrook on the podcast. We're gonna talk about your real favorite player, Matt, Al Horford, of course. Oklahoma City plans to shut him down. He was not moved at the deadline. It was weird. No one wanted his 2-year, $53 million contract. I wonder what team was stupid enough to sign him to that. I just wonder. Anyways, though, Matt, what do you think? Is this the right move by the Thunder? Are they going to be able to find him a new home?
I mean, who would want that contract? I mean, the Thunder would have to eat a significant amount of that salary in order to trade him in the offseason. I would think maybe buy him out, but I just think the years left and the money left is just way too much, way too astronomical for anybody to buy him out. But I will say that it's pretty crazy that Oklahoma City can tank as openly and obviously as they are. But Adam Silver got Sam Hinkie fired, even though the Sixers were playing their best players every night. But apparently that wasn't good enough. He had to step in and get Sam Hinkie fired. But the Thunder benched their best players, and Adam Silver turns a blind eye to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. I know you're not the biggest fan of Adam Silver. He's a good commissioner though. Anyways, though, we didn't leave any positive moments, negative moments behind, and we definitely didn't leave any players behind, Matt. So that leads us to the very famous motto here on Ball Don't Lie.
Which is no team left behind.
Not at all. Not even Al Horford gets left behind here. But we're going to talk about our players of the week. Matt, who made the list first? Did you do a college one this week, or did you go back to the NBA?
I did pro.
Okay.
Because there was some guys I needed to note who have really been going off. I'm going to start with De'Aaron Fox. Don't look now, but the Kings have won 5 games in a row, and this man has been at the center of it. During this 5-game win streak, Fox has averaged 34 points per game, including a 44-point outburst against the Curryless Warriors. I will say the competition hasn't been amazing in those 5 games, but the Kings aren't all that in a bag of chips either, so this is impressive for them to win 5 in a row. Fox must have been fired up about being a low-key all-star snub because he has been going off since the all-star break.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox has been an absolute monster, having one of those like post all-star surges that we see from guys who get snubbed sometimes. He has had a phenomenal season. The Kings struggled a lot recently, but like you said, Matt, they're starting to win some games. Good for them. And De'Aaron Fox is obviously the biggest reason why that is the case. Next on my list here, though, is a pretty similar name, Rui Hachimura of the Washington Wizards. Anyways, though, averaging over 22 points per game, just under 7 rebounds per game over the last 7 days, including 30 points in his last game and then 26 the game before. So playing some of his best basketball of his career so far. Wizards have won 2 out of their last 3 games last week, too. So they are winning games. It's been the Russell Westbrook show. But Rui Hachimura is also doing his thing there, too.
Yeah, look at them actually winning games. Very impressive for them. He's been, obviously gotten a lot more opportunities here with them, more than he would maybe somewhere else because, they did draft him in the lottery. They expect a lot out of him. And he's, starting to get a little bit more opportunities here to score, maybe even get rebounds, play a little bit better defense. Obviously, scoring 26 and 30 in your last 2 games is pretty impressive. I just think he needs to become more of maybe a modern type NBA player. I think he dominates the post, but I think he needs to get, if he really wants to take it to the next level, he needs to get a jump shot, maybe shoot some threes.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Matt. I wasn't the biggest Rui Hachimura fan going into that draft. I actually like Brandon Clark a lot more. And to be honest, he's a lot better player, too, and went way later in the draft out of Gonzaga. Both of them played there. But Rui Hachimura, he can score. He does get buckets, just not in the most efficient way. He shoots those long twos, which, NBA analytics do not like at all. Trying to do his best Carmelo Anthony impersonation, I guess. But yeah, he's getting buckets lately, and the Wizards, the one thing they can do is score a lot of points, and he's been getting buckets. So, Matt, who else made the list for you here?
Oh, I'm going to go back to a guy we just talked about, and it's Karl Anthony Towns. We talked about his perseverance earlier, and he has had probably his best stretch of the season over the past week. He's averaging over 28 points per game and 11.5 rebounds per game while having 4 double-doubles in that stretch. It's a shame his team is the absolute bootiest of cheeks, as they've only won 1 of those games. I think it was 1 out of 5 games they won. Let's start the petition to get this man out of Minnesota, please.
Yeah, they're really bad. I think D'Angelo Russell bringing him in definitely helped wanting him to stay there because they're like best friends. Anthony Edwards has been really good too for them, the Timberwolves. He might win Rookie of the Year now with LaMelo unfortunately being out because he's playing so well recently. And unfortunately, sometimes when you don't play a whole lot of games, it's hard to really maintain that front runner status for Rookie of the Year, in my opinion. But next on my list is going to be another former number 1 pick, Andrew Wiggins, who was also on the Minnesota Timberwolves. But got to give him credit. Steph Curry, he did come back, but he did miss 5 games. But Andrew Wiggins did a great job trying to be that number 1 guy in his place. Averaged a little over 25 points per game, 4 assists, which is very good for him. He's not very good at the passing thing. He just likes shooting 25 shots a game and making 10 of them. But also almost 7 rebounds per game as well. Really good shooting numbers too. Shooting a little over almost 54% from the field, shooting almost 59% from 3. So again, shooting better from 3 than he's shooting from the field. And then 83% from the line. A great stretch of basketball for Andrew Wiggins. If he can keep up that somewhat though, maybe the Warriors have a shot to make some noise in the playoffs if they even make it.
Yeah, man. I mean, Andrew Wiggins is probably one of the most. No, he's one of the most inconsistent players in the league. He's probably been one of the most disappointing number 1 picks, prodigies that were supposed to be. The Maple Mamba, if you will, Maple Jordan is what they called him. But He had 40 points on the 19th against Memphis in the game that the Warriors actually won, which they have not been doing a lot of recently. So that's good for them. He's been playing well. I question his fit on just about any team because he is exactly what you don't want. As you said, analytics hate this man because he shoots the long twos. He's an inconsistent shooter. He doesn't make his free throws. He's liability on defense. He turns the ball over. But yeah, a good week, Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, again, this is players of the week, not players of all time. But I will say too, yeah, Andrew Wiggins, all the talent in the world, but just never put it together. Which I think speaks more to him than it does to us. But who rounds out the list for you here, Matt?
This one kind of stings, but it's Donovan Mitchell. During Utah's current 6-game winning streak, Mitchell has averaged 29.5 points per game while shooting 65% from three in his last 5 games, which is ridiculous. I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest Donovan Mitchell fan, but you can't deny how well he's played this year or the fact that he's the main star of the team with the best record in the league.
Donovan Mitchell's a problem. I think I love Donovan Mitchell. He's one of my favorite players of basketball, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, he is so freaking good. He's had a phenomenal season. The Jazz were struggling a lot recently, but like you said, on a 6-game win streak now, they're getting back to their winning ways like they were when they were on that huge 20-some game win streak. So yeah, shout out to Utah, I guess.
Yeah, see, here's why he grinds my gears.
This is where he grinds
Here's why he pisses me off. He needs 3 screens in order to create separation and get an open shot, and he's the king of taking 30 shots a game, making 11 of them, and taking 17 free throws a game and having 30-something points. And everybody's like, oh, look, Donovan Mitchell had all these points, but in reality, he's just taking 15 free throws a game because he does that stupid Trae Young thing where he just pump fakes and gets someone in the air and then hits them.
Yeah, well, also too, Donovan Mitchell is great at creating separation. His handles are ridiculous. He shoots over everyone. He's only 6'2". This dude is an absolute bucket. He also has a 6'11" wingspan. The guy's got these long ass freaking arms. So yeah, I'm not gonna deal with this Donovan Mitchell slander. We all know he's better than Ben Simmons. Just admit it, Matt.
Oh my God, Hunter, don't do this.
Yeah,
no,
you
we're not having this
conversation. You know it.
I don't know it. No.
Yeah.
No, I don't, Hunter.
Better.
Donovan Mitchell first of all, he complained so much about the Rookie of the Year thing, and he wore that stupid sweatshirt with the definition of rookie on it. And he didn't even understand what the definition meant because on the definition on the sweatshirt that he marketed literally proved Ben Simmons' point that he was a rookie. I'm not doing this, Hunter. Nope. Continue. Who's your next player?
Ben Simmons had a better rookie year, but Donovan Mitchell's better now. Next on my list, though, I brought up 2 of the most inefficient players maybe in basketball. But I'm going to bring up an efficient darling. That's Chuma Okeke of the Orlando Magic. Talk about analytics to a T here. He's 6'9". He shoots threes. He can guard positions 1 through 4. This is a guy that the modern basketball loves. For those of you who might not remember Chuma Okeke, he was with that Auburn team, not this past tournament, but the tournament before. So that was 2 years ago. It seems like forever ago when they made that awesome run. He was the catalyst of that team, but tore his ACL in the Elite 8. However, though, he still got drafted in the lottery 14th overall by the Orlando Magic in that following draft. He missed his entire rookie year, recovering from the torn ACL. And then this year, he was sitting behind guys like Aaron Gordon and Evan Fournier and Nikola Vucevic, who all are now traded. So someone's got to take those minutes. Someone needs to get playing time. And that guy is Chuma Okeke. And so far, I actually did watch him play recently because they played the Lakers, and he looked really good. He's averaging 18 points per game this past week, as well as 3 assists and 5 rebounds, shooting 56% from the field, 53% from 3, and has not even missed a free throw at all. Got to give this guy credit. Again, the Magic are rebuilding. He's a really good young player. I'm telling you right now, he's going to be a really good player in the future. I think that they actually hit on this one.
I'm very glad you brought him, Hunter, because I do remember watching him in that tournament. He was an awesome player for Auburn, one of their best players, if not their best player. I love that he's shooting threes, man. He was 4 for 4 from 3 against Phoenix in his first game that he actually played significant minutes. He, like you said, he's definitely going to benefit from Aaron Gordon, Nikola Vucevic not being there anymore. He's definitely going to get a brunt of the minutes. I hope Orlando sticks with him, keeps giving him minutes because he's going to need him. He's looking like he's playing really, really well, though. It looks like he contributed a lot in their comeback victory over the Clippers last night, putting up 18 points. And 18 points. Good for him, man.
Yeah, Chuma Okeke getting that 4 for 4 like he just ordered at Wendy's, if you know what I'm saying. Anyways, though, let's move to the NBA trade deadline review here. Our podcast was right before the deadline happened, so we gave you a preview of all this stuff. Now we're going to review all of it, as well as some guys on the buyout market. And the team that was busier than any other team was the Orlando Magic at the deadline. Not going to lie, I called it. I said they were going to do it, and they absolutely did. They literally cleared the house. They sold everybody on the farm. And the biggest trade, of course, was Nikola Vucevic. And Alfred Gamino, too. He was also in that deal. Went to the Chicago Bulls in exchange for Otto Porter Jr., Wendell Carter Jr., and 2 first-round picks. The Bulls also made another side trade, getting Mo Wagner and Troy Brown from the Wizards for Daniel Gafford, Chandler Hutchinson, the most irrelevant trade perhaps on the entire day. Swap bust draft picks for the other ones, I guess. Anyways, though, Matt, what did you think about you can start with either side here, or if you want to go into both, you can, about this trade and what it means for the Bulls and the Magic?
Well, I think it's a good trade for both sides, honestly. I think Chicago needed to convince Zach LaVine that they're committed to winning and building around him. This trade does that. I don't know if they'll see the benefits of this deal this year necessarily because they're so far down in the standings already. They might make the play-in tournament, who knows, but they've been struggling before they made the deal. But I think they'll certainly see the benefits of it next year if they have a competent roster around LaVine and Vucevic, because those are 2 legitimate star players, man, 2 all-stars that you could definitely build around. And I think the Magic actually got a good haul back. The first-round pick this year should be a lottery pick, with the Bulls maybe making the play-in tournament, but not sure. Otto Porter is a relative of Wilt Chamberlain, so that works out well. And Wendell Carter Jr. is a good young player who fits their rebuild and replaces Vucevic right away. Maybe he'll slot in right next to Okigi there and get some good minutes for Orlando.
I absolutely agree with you. I love this trade for both teams. For the Magic, I said it. I said Nikola Vucevic, if you're going to trade him, now's the time. His stock is not going to be any higher. He's having the best year of his career. And this team's got to decide, are we just going to be stuck in the middle fighting for a playing spot every year? Or are we going to fully commit to either going all in or going all out and embracing the tank? They were nowhere near winning a championship, so they had to embrace the tank and trust the process. And that's what they're doing. And I respect it a lot. Again, for the Magic fans, it stinks that for a fact these guys aren't going to win a whole lot of games. But at least your team finally has a clear direction. I wonder if Steve Clifford's going to be there much longer just because he's an older head coach too. Very good one, but he is on the older side of things. For the Bulls, I think this is an awesome trade. Like you said, Matt, I was sick and tired of the Bulls, getting rid of Derrick Rose, getting rid of Jimmy Butler, getting rid of all these guys that were helping them win games and then just letting them walk or trading them for nothing. They get Zach LaVine, one of the most talented players in basketball, in my opinion. A guy who's having a phenomenal season, phenomenal season. He's like the guy now, like we talked about Devin Booker being like best player on an awful team. Like I guess Bradley Beal fits in that one too. But getting Nikola Vucevic, I think he's one of the best centers in basketball. When I was really looking at it, I'm like, he's a really freaking good player. And if you're able to get one more piece there too, I think they have what it takes to really build something special there.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, definitely building around those 2 guys, because I think honestly LaVine and Vucevic's game, they really complement each other well. They're not going to get in each other's way. They're obviously one of them is a guard, one of them is a center, so obviously not going to get each other's way too much, and obviously the games won't clash too much. But I think it's a good, great mix. I think they just need to put some shooters around them, maybe get a competent point guard. I think Kobe White could be a great point guard for them. I think they're going to mesh really well, and I think Billy Donovan's the right guy to coach that team too. He's a great head coach.
Yeah, I believe that Donovan is a really good coach. I think he's done a pretty good job with that team. I just didn't think they were very great this year. But Zach LaVine's had the best year under him. Kobe White showed some promise, and now getting Vooch there too. Like you said, Matt, maybe they'll do something this year. I don't know. But next year, I definitely think Bulls could be something to look out for. So credit their front office being aggressive. They fired John Paxson there. It was a hard fire, of course, because he's a Bulls legend. But they did what they had to do, and they're definitely, showing their true cards. But looking at the Boston Celtics, they made an interesting move too. That's kind of received some controversy from both sides here. Matt doesn't love the number Evan Fournier is wearing, number 94, but he is. And that's who they got from the Orlando Magic for Jeff Teague and 2 second-round picks. They were able to use the $17 million that's owed to Evan Fournier. They had a trade exception from Gordon Hayward due to the sign trade from the Celtics to the Charlotte Hornets. Matt, what did you think of this move, though? Was it worth it for Boston?
I mean, the Celtics fans were just begging Danny Ainge to make a move, and this is what he did. Fournier is fine, and giving up Teague is fine too, but they needed more than this. They ended up giving up Daniel Tice too to Chicago, which doesn't make sense at all because they still have no big men. It gave him up for virtually no reason. this trade, while it may seem okay on the surface, it really doesn't fix any of their problems, honestly. And also the fact that Fournier is wearing number 94 and went 0 of 10 from the field in his debut with the Celtics is not a coincidence. That dude's got to change his number. That's such an ugly number. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he thinks he's playing defensive, playing off the edge or something for an NFL team. I don't know. Yeah, I don't mind the move just because they didn't really give up anything for him, and Evan Fournier is a pretty solid NBA player, so I'm fine with the move. I don't hate it because but I agree, Matt. They didn't really address their issues, which is that this is a soft team that is gonna get killed in the interior by just about everybody. They have great wings already, Tatum and Brown. So I guess they're trying to just add to what they already have and make you play their brand of basketball, kind of what Houston did last year when they decided that centers weren't a thing anymore. But yeah, I think the move's fine. I don't hate it. I wonder if he's going to re-sign there or not because he is in a contract year. But yeah, it's a good move, but it's not. It didn't really solve anything, like you said, Matt.
Yeah, it's not going to help him come playoff time. I mean, he'll get his minutes, he'll get his points, and he'll get his own shots off the bench. But I just don't see how it fits for them in a serious playoff run. It doesn't.
Yeah, well, a player that maybe the Celtics should have tried trading for but couldn't get is Aaron Gordon, who ended up getting traded from the Magic to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a protected 2025 first-round pick. They also, being the Nuggets, got JaVale McGee. He used to play in Denver, but they got him from Cleveland for Isaiah Hartenstein and 2 second-round picks. So what do you think about some of these moves Denver made? Was it worth it? Do you think these guys fit? And how does it help them the rest of the way?
Well, finally, man, the Denver Nuggets got their starting caliber center. They've been looking for that for a couple years now. But Aaron Gordon fits really well there in Denver. This is the exact position they needed to fill, and he's filled in well already. He hasn't scored too much in his first 2 games there, but he's been efficient when he has put up shots. And honestly, they haven't needed to because the last 2 games they've won have been blowouts. He's going to fit there really well despite the ugly number choice yet again, number 50. I know he chose that because of the dunk contest or whatever, but
Still salty about it.
yeah, yes, clearly. And then from the Magic's perspective, with the Aaron Gordon deal, the Magic really didn't get much in this deal, I don't think. Hampton is promising, but in all honesty, he hasn't done much yet, and he needs time to develop. He'll certainly get more time in Orlando, especially with Markelle Fultz still out there in Orlando, but I just don't know what he's going to pan out to be. And then, protected first-round picks are so dumb. Can we get rid of those? That holds no weight in, the trade. Why would the Magic be like, yeah, we'll take a late first-round pick? I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, I'm figuring, 2025 is a little ways away from now, so it's hard to say where the Nuggets are going to be at that point. But I think it's protected because of that certain Kyrie Irving deal that happened that we talked about last week on the podcast. So the protections can be a little important sometimes, I think. I will say, though, I like both these moves they made. I always thought Gary Harris was kind of overrated, to be honest with you. So I think them losing him is not that big of a deal. RJ Hampton could be interesting just because I think he's an exciting young player, but the Nuggets are in win now mode, and they he wasn't getting a whole lot of minutes there, and they still have some other young pieces there too. So RJ Hampton, you have to give up something to get a good player like Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon, he is a shot maker. He can play on and off the ball, can do a little bit of everything. Also, has really developed as a playmaker this year, has become a much better 3-point shooter, something he couldn't do at all coming out of Arizona. So I do like that fit with the Nuggets. Also brings some athleticism and excitement. And then I said on our NBA segment last week that I really thought the Nuggets should look for a nice, solid backup big man to Jokic because they didn't have that. And McGee perfectly fits that. He's won multiple championships with different teams. He's played in Denver before, although it was a long-ass time ago. But I think that JaVale McGee is a solid fit there. He is athletic. He can run the floor. He catches lobs. He rebounds the ball. A lot of things Mason Plumlee did, but he's not there anymore. So I think he complements Nikola Jokic very nicely.
And I think McGee is the perfect for them as well because he's used to that backup center role. He's used to playing well when he gets in. He's an athletic freak, can dunk, can rebound. He plays decent enough defense for a backup center. I think it's a good move for the Nuggets as well. I agree.
I agree. I think that this is a team that has always thrived off depth. Mike Malone likes playing a lot of different guys, and now they have that ability in the front court, which is good. Anyways, though, if it wasn't for the Nikola Vucevic trade, I think the trade we'd all be talking about is Victor Oladipo going to Miami for nothing. Just kidding. They did technically give up things. Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley. And then, Matt, if the protections don't piss you off, this one will probably piss you off more. The rights to swap 2022 first-round picks. They also have that ability, too. The Heat also got Nemanja Bjelica from the Sacramento Kings, too, for Mo Harkless and Chris Silva. What do you think about the Heat's moves here? Do you think it's going to make any significant difference in the East?
Man, they made out like bandits, dude. And a 2022 first round pick spot, man, because the Rockets are gonna have a much better pick than the Heat will in 2022. I think both of those moves are really, really good. Like you said, Hunter, they gave up virtually nothing for two players that I think will really help them end up back in the top 4 or 5 in the Eastern Conference. They've been struggling a bit recently, back down to 8. But I think Oladipo fits perfectly next to Butler. It puts Robinson back on the bench where I think he probably fits better with Tyler Hero. And even Bjelica, like you said, from Sacramento, he's going to come off the bench for them too. And he's a great three-point shot maker, which is what every team needs, every playoff team needs come playoff time. So I think there's 2 great moves for the Heat, especially since they gave up pretty much nothing for him.
Yeah, Bjelica hasn't had a great season. Hasn't done as much with the Kings, but he does shoot threes, and he's a stretch 4, which we talked about. The Heat definitely need that when you watch them play. They need a guy who can space the floor like that to let Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo do their thing in the paint. And Victor Oladipo, too, very good NBA player. He maybe isn't as good as he was during that most improved season, but still a really good get. Like we said, Matt, gave up basically nothing to get him anyway. So I think he'll also be there long term. I heard he wanted to go to the Heat. They wouldn't make this move. They didn't feel confident they could sign him. They have a whole lot of cap space, which they saved up for Giannis, but he won't be going there this offseason unless a crazy trade happens out of nowhere. So, yeah, I think this is a good move for the Heat. Victor Oladipo gives them something that they didn't have, and I definitely think it helps them. I think the Heat are a legit contender coming out of the East when they're healthy. I really do.
I think so too. I think they just need to get their playing together here in a little bit. Get back to playing the way they're supposed to play, which is not as the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. I think they'll get better though. I think pretty much everywhere from 4 through like 9 or 10 in the Eastern Conference is all just teams that are like 2 games apart from each other. So I think the Heat will turn it around, especially when Oladipo gets acclimated there. I think they'll really start turning around. I think that their depth now is really, really deep. They're a really deep team, especially at the guard position now. I think it's going to benefit them come playoff time.
Yeah, I absolutely think so too. I think Victor Oladipo is going to be a great addition to that team. Speaking of getting some, really good guards though, there's some sneaky good moves that were happening there. Rajon Rondo going back to LA, but not the Lakers, the Clippers this time for Lou Williams and 2 second-round picks, and George Hill going to your Philadelphia 76ers in a 3-team deal. They also got Iggy Brasdeikis in there, who definitely busted out of Michigan. The Thunder got Austin Rivers, Tony Bradley, 2 second-round picks, and Knicks getting Terrence Ferguson and Vincent Poirier, who apparently already just got waived. So what do you think about these moves, though, for these teams? Do you think that's definitely going to help them at all or make any significant impact?
I think the Rondo one is definitely going to make an impact for the Clippers because they just needed a point guard so desperately. I think anybody would have been an upgrade there. Any true point guard would have been an upgrade there. It's tough to see Lou Will play somewhere else that isn't the Clippers, but if he's going to go anywhere, I'm glad it's Atlanta because he'll surely have a positive impact on the local nightlife economy that he loves so much. Like you said in your segment on Monday.
Business.
Yep. And then as far as George Hill goes, the Sixers got the backup point guard they so desperately needed. He's a great team guy who knows his role and has playoff experience. Perfect fit for this team. Also, Iggy Brasdeikis, man, they got the Greek Army knife, which is the coolest, most undeserved nickname ever. And honestly, for the Sixers, losing Tony Bradley has kind of hurt the Sixers in the short term here recently, as they've had Dwight Howard and Mike Scott playing center, and Dwight Howard's been ejected 2 of the last couple games. So we really were just running Mike Scott at center for a lot, you can imagine was pretty ugly. But when Embiid comes back, I think that it won't matter anymore, and the Sixers will be fine. But I really do like that move that the Sixers made because if you're not going to get Kyle Lowry, you didn't have to break the bank open to get George Hill either.
Not at all. I love the move for both teams here. For the Clippers, like you said, they needed a guy who just guys that playoff, that experience, that dog at the point guard position, a leader, because let's face it, as good of players as Kawhi and Paul George are, they're not really the most vocal guys, especially Kawhi Leonard. So they need a guy like Rondo there. He's a big reason why teams win games. We've seen it everywhere he goes. And playoff Rondo is a real thing. He does elevate his game in the playoffs, and that's what you want to see out of your players, especially at this point, role players, because role players He'd be so up and down, but Rondo is always at the top of his game when it matters most. George Hill, I think, is a great get too. A guy with a ton of experience with a bunch of teams. He's great on the ball. He can play defense, but also great off the ball. One of the best spot up shooters in the NBA. I think statistically he was one of the best last year with the Bucks. And the Sixers have become a much better 3-point shooting team. So having him there, he fits perfectly. Can play on and off the ball. Can also guard the point guard position, which is important because Ben Simmons is 6'10", can guard anybody. But you can have the luxury of having him guard some wings now, focus more on that, using his size there, and then George Hill can kind of guard more of the guards, especially when you have a guy like Seth Curry who's not the best defender. So I think the fits make a lot of sense, and I think this was two very sneaky gets for two contending teams.
I think so too. Daryl Morey knows what he's doing, man. I trust that man.
He really does. Anyways, though, I want to talk about a trade that I did not understand at all. Norman Powell, a good basketball player, and no disrespect to him, having a career year. But I did not understand trading Gary Trent Jr. for him and Rodney Hood, who, I mean, I guess that's whatever. But Gary Trent Jr. is only 22 years old, having a career year. I feel like it's very rare you get a guy that young, that good in the second round of a draft. And they had that in him. He has had a great season. But nevertheless, the Portland Trailblazers did it. I don't know, Matt. Do you think they sold out a little bit here?
Hunter, we're starting to agree on a lot of things. It's starting to scare me, but I hated this deal as well. Trent Jr. was such a promising young sharpshooter for Portland. I think he fit them really well too, especially coming off the bench where they needed 3-point shooting. And they gave him up to get a decent player in return. Yes, and Norman Powell, who's a good player. He's shooting as you said, having a career year, having a great 3-point shooting year. But Powell is obviously older and will command more money in free agency next season. After this season, after next season, he'll command more money in free agency. He's on a pretty cheap deal now, but I still think giving up on a 22-year-old and Gary Trent Jr., who is so good at shooting threes, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know if something happened. This does not make sense. It's funny though. So apparently, Gary Trent Sr., who is Gary Trent's father, both of them got traded 41 games into their third season. From the Portland Trailblazers to the Toronto Raptors. Matt, my mind was blown hearing that. But nevertheless, though, I think I'm even more shocked that this trade happened. The Blazers accepted this.
Yeah, I agree, man. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Unfortunately, me and Matt, we talk too much, I guess. But looking at the Dallas Mavericks, they made an interesting move, getting J.J. Redick and Nicole Melli from the New Orleans Pelicans for James Johnson, Wes Iwundu, and a 2021 second-round pick. Do you think that these two snipers can make a big difference in Dallas?
Well, I think they will just because, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, the Mavericks need shooting, man. They need shooting outside of Luka Doncic, and J.J. Redick is about as consistent as it gets from the three-point line. And, it's like Mark Cuban heard how pissed everyone in Texas was for him saying he won't play the national anthem anymore games. So he's just trying to make it up to them by acquiring every white player he can. So I think, I guess from that perspective, he's getting the fans on his side. But I do like the move from a basketball perspective too.
Jeez, no chill, Matt. No chill at all. Anyways, though, no, we stand Mark Cuban on this podcast, though. We give him his flowers where it's deserved. I like the move. They didn't give up really anything to get him. And like you said, these guys can hit shots. This is what they do. I think Nicole Melli is actually a pretty underrated player. I like him as a nice 5 backup for Kristaps. They also can play together as well. He's a good basketball player. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Nicole Melli. And then J.J. Redick, they lost Seth Curry, and this is as close as you're going to get to him as possible. So, they fill that hole there too. And like we've talked about in the podcast, last week, the week before, the Mavericks have really struggled, outside of Luka and Porzingis getting points from their other guys. So these guys can get buckets. They can, shoot the lights out of the basketball. I think this is a good move for Dallas.
I think so too. I think it'll help them in the long run, especially since they need that 3-point shooting. If Redick comes off the bench, I think they desperately needed it there. Maybe move Hardaway back into the starting lineup. I think, especially with Josh Richardson not making a lot of shots, not being really a 3-point shot maker, I think that move makes a lot of sense for the Mavericks.
Yep, absolutely. But looking at the buyout market, usually it's not like a whole lot interesting. Not this year. There's some pretty big names in the buyout market. Now, to get this out of the way, Jeff Teague got bought out, and he's with the Milwaukee Bucks. So that happened. But 2 more former All-Stars, too, and this is the ones everyone's talking about. LaMarcus Aldridge getting bought out by the Spurs, going to the Brooklyn Nets, and Andre Drummond getting bought out by the Cavs and going to the LA Lakers. What do you think about these moves, both for the individuals and the teams?
Well, Hunter, I'm going to start off by saying the control room is now open. But in terms of basketball, I'm going to start, everyone overreacted to the LaMarcus Aldridge move. He's 35 and he can't move. If he starts for this team, that will be a huge disadvantage for them come playoff time. I just don't think he has it anymore. He's a good player, certainly, but I just don't think he's gonna have much left in the tank. Everybody kind of freaked out, like, oh, if they don't win the championship now, but I really don't think he does much, honestly. And then Drummond to the Lakers. I don't know if you can probably speak more on this, Hunter, but I feel as though the Lakers, from my perspective, have so many big men already with Gasol, Montrezl Harrell, and obviously LeBron and AD when they come back. So I'm just confused a little bit by the fit. And then Jeff Teague, the Bucks. It's just their much cheaper George Hill replacement. So
Yeah, I think for the Lakers, I'll start there. I think Andre Drummond does make sense. Like, if you're looking pure short term here, like the Lakers have desperately missed Anthony Davis a lot, and Andre Drummond is as close as you're going to get to Anthony Davis on the market. He obviously took a vet's minimum and wants to be there and wants to win a championship. Andre Drummond has his faults. I don't think he's the most efficient player, not a great shooter, not kind of a turnover machine. But I think in a limited role, and you put him in a situation like do what you do best, go get rebounds. A guy who averages almost 14 rebounds per game in his entire career, and go dominate in the paint. I think it makes a lot of sense. He's better than Marc Gasol, and arguably better than Montrezl Harrell too. I think Gasol probably takes the brunt of the minutes here and probably gets a lot less. But Andre Drummond, I just look at it as an upgrade at the position. The rich just keep getting richer, I guess. So I'm not opposed to this move, honestly, for the Lakers. Like, again, why not? You're getting a borderline all-star caliber player on a veteran minimum deal, and he wants to be there and win championships. And that's what he said. He wants to win. That's why he went. He's played for the Pistons and the Cavs, two of the worst teams in basketball since he's been there. He made the playoffs twice in his career. Now he can play for a contender. So I think he's gonna like that. And again, with the LaMarcus Aldridge deal, I am on the same boat as you. I think he's ring chasing at this point. LaMarcus Aldridge, a fantastic career he's had. He's not nearly the same player. Had by far the worst year of his career this year. They already had Blake Griffin there. I didn't really get the sign for the Nets. I feel like they just signed him just so another team didn't.
yeah, it just signed. It just like, well, everybody hates us anyway, and they're gonna freak out about the deal. So we'll sign him just because we can. And in terms of Andre Drummond, I guess that does make sense. He is better in a limited role, and I'm sure he's a lot better when he's not the main guy that you have to depend on to score points. If he just gets rebounds and gets put back dunks, then he fits his role, I think, for the Lakers. Certainly better than Marc Gasol did, because Marc Gasol doesn't have those ups anymore. So I think Drummond will be an upgrade for the Lakers defensively, getting rebounds for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Andre Drummond move a lot more than I like the LaMarcus Aldridge move, to be honest. But again, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm proven wrong with Aldridge. I don't know. He's a solid player, a good player. I think for the bench, that's good for them. But doesn't really feel any needs for the Nets. Like we talked about, how some of these teams are getting player like Evan Fournier. Like doesn't really feel a need for the Celtics at all. But anyways, though, a couple players who a lot of people thought could have been traded weren't. Lonzo Ball is staying with the Pelicans. Kyle Lowry will, at least for now, be with the Raptors. And then John Collins staying with the Atlanta Hawks. Are you shocked about any of these guys staying? Or did you ultimately think this was going to happen?
Well, I am beyond flabbergasted that the Raptors didn't trade Kyle Lowry. They really stuck to their guns when they said they wouldn't trade him unless they got the right deal in return. And the same could be said about Lonzo Ball. All around, I'm a little surprised that those two deals didn't happen, just because I feel like there were two guys that both teams could capitalize on getting something back for, especially since they're both going to hit the open market, although Lonzo Ball hit the open market as a restricted free agent. But I think it's something two teams that are not in playoff contention right now could have capitalized on. I think Lonzo and Collins will end up sticking around at those places for a bit. They're both restricted free agents, like I said, with Lonzo Ball, and the same will be true for John Collins. So unless they're signing deals for way more than they're worth, I think their teams will match their deals in free agency, and they'll just end up playing at the same place.
I think so too. I think Lonzo, I know, I think you and me did that segment. I'm like, Lonzo's going to get traded. It's going to happen. And then the rumors started flying. But I'll be honest, I definitely didn't expect Lonzo to start playing like an absolute monster after that, because he did. He's playing some of the best basketball of his career, having probably his best season so far. So shout out to him for responding to the haters and, putting his money where his mouth is, I guess. Because I think he's gonna make a ton of money. I think he's gonna make like $20+ million a year with the Pelicans. I think he's gonna get the bag. I really do. Collins probably will too. The Hawks are winning a lot of games recently, and so trading your second best player doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Especially when you're, now nicely more firm in the playoff race. After, I guess maybe Lloyd Pierce was the problem. I don't know. But anyways, though, the Kyle Lowry one, I didn't think he was going to get traded. And then I heard all the rumors. I was like, okay, he might be gone, especially when he was like, I don't know if I'm going to be here. And he said that in his post-game press conference, what would have been potentially his last game as a Toronto Raptor, 35 years old. Apparently his house is for sale. So yeah, I think that Kyle Lowry was interesting just because like he might leave anyway. And so to get him for nothing is not great.
Yeah, I think the Raptors just wanted to hold on to him and be, kind of let him have his Carmelo Anthony tour, I guess. Just let him go around. Kind of just, I don't know, man. I don't really get not trading him, especially when you could get something for him. And it seemed like the Sixers and Heat were both prepared to offer a good amount for him. I guess the Raptors didn't like what they saw in terms of that, but I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't get it. I think the Raptors are just being too nice to Kyle Lowry because they understand what he did for the organization, but I don't get it.
Yeah, that one was a little confusing too. Yeah, especially just hearing all the rumors happening. And it sounded like the Lakers and the Clippers and the Heat, the Sixers, they were all willing to give up pieces to get Kyle Lowry, and it just didn't happen. But maybe he will be there long term. I don't know. Anyways, though, we have been covering March Madness here on Ball Don't Lie. I know we're predominantly an NBA podcast, but 'tis the season. So the Final Four is now set. It's going to be Baylor taking on Houston, and then so the battle of the two Texas teams, I guess, and then Gonzaga taking on UCLA. So battle of the West Coast teams too. I don't know if a lot of people predicted this Final Four. If someone somehow did, congratulations, I guess. But let's talk about the Sweet 16 Elite 8 a little bit here, Matt. What were some of the highlights for you there?
I think just UCLA going on the run they did, and even Oregon State defeating Loyola Chicago was a bit of a surprise to me. That seemed like an ugly game from the score. Oregon State did end up winning that one, though. UCLA winning their two games and probably being, two of the more exciting games of the weekend. They beat Alabama, even though Alabama had one of the probably most electric moments of the tournament, hitting that nearly 30-foot buzzer beater to tie the game, send it to overtime. UCLA did end up dominating that overtime, beating Alabama. And then last night against Michigan, probably one of the most ugly games of the tournament, 51-49 final score. An ugly score with an ugly ending. An airball three-pointer to take the lead from Michigan's Franz Wagner, and then a three-point attempt that hit the back of the rim as time expired for Michigan. Ran out on them. UCLA and then probably run to the Final Four after being just the second team to advance from the first four all the way to the Final Four. The first team to do that was VCU's Shaka Smart team. So I think it's definitely interesting to have an 11 seed in the Final Four, but the other ones are pretty much chalk.
Yeah, and it's shocking too that UCLA, like this was a team that a lot of people assumed was going to lose to Michigan State in the play-in tournament, and a lot of people didn't even think UCLA should have even been in the tournament to begin with, and yet they still made it. They're here, and I think the Houston one, I still don't know about this team, Matt. I know they're in the Final Four. I know they've only lost 3 games this year, but look who they had to play. They had to play Cleveland State, Rutgers, Syracuse, and Oregon State. The highest seed was a 10 seed there in Rutgers. That's the best thing they had to play to get here. I don't know, Matt. Do you think that's like the easiest route to the Final Four you've ever seen?
Probably. I mean, having to play all double-digit seeds just to get to the Final Four, that's probably the first time that's ever happened. And if you look at that Rutgers game, they honestly should have lost that game. They were down by 5 or 6 in the last 30 or so seconds in that game, and they ended up winning just because Rutgers kind of self-imploded there at the end. Houston, I think they're going to get smacked by Baylor, honestly. I think in the Final Four, and I also think Gonzaga is going to smack UCLA. I think we're headed for a crash course of a Gonzaga-Baylor national championship game, which will be a good game, but I just don't think either of the Final Four games will be all that great.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird one. Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point too, Matt, because I don't know about you. I feel like Gonzaga and Baylor have just absolutely dominated this entire tournament. They have just steamrolled every single team. And I know like months ago we were talking about it's Gonzaga, Baylor, or bust back when both these teams were undefeated. Baylor lost a couple games. People were flipping out, but yet they still ended up in the Final Four. So I'm assuming that's who you're picking to win those games then?
Yeah, Baylor and Gonzaga. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess in a hypothetical theory, who do you think would win a championship there come Monday night?
Yeah, I think Gonzaga is the best team. I think they're gonna be the first undefeated team in quite some time. I think their team is just so deep, man, and they just don't make mistakes. Even watching them last night, they got ahead so easily and so early, and they just dominated the rest of the game. I just don't see any holes on this team right now. They're so well coached. They're starting to get all these great recruits, and they play really well together. They're meshed really well together. This is gonna be the year that Gonzaga wins the tournament, I think.
Yeah, I had them in my finals against Illinois. Well, we both did. So we thought we had awesome Final Fours. We agreed with everything, and then we were stupid. And realized that maybe we don't actually know what we're talking about. I guess. Also, too, just for UCLA, I saw less than 1% of ESPN brackets had them in the Final Four. That's wild. And I'm sure that was all just UCLA fans because they have a pretty big fan base, as we already know. One of the blue bloods. But anyways, though. Also, I felt really interesting. 3 Pac-12 teams made it to the Elite Eight, and not a single Big Ten team made it to the Final Four. The only one that did or made it to the Elite Eight was Michigan, who, like we said, just lost to UCLA. I can't believe that happened. We were talking about the Big Ten all year as being a team that's maybe even 2 teams in the Final Four, multiple championship contenders, and this is how they show out, Matt.
Yeah, it seems like the Big Ten just got like they just beat up on each other so much by the time they got to the tournament, they were just all exhausted. They had been, by the time the tournament even started, they had been in Indianapolis for 2 weeks because they had to quarantine before their Big Ten tournament that was also in Indianapolis. So they've been in Indy for a while. Maybe they just got exhausted, but it just seems like they were tired from beating each other up all the time. And it just showed in the tournament because they got, it seemed like everybody that lost in pretty ugly fashion. So yeah, the Big Ten definitely a disappointing showing this year, and the Pac-12 quite the opposite because everything we thought the Big Ten was ended up being what the Pac-12 was. Everything we thought the Pac-12 was ended up being everything the Big Ten was. So Pac-12 very underrated conference. Bill Walton is absolutely losing his mind right now. He's screaming that he was right about the Pac-12.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I think Oregon State got a little lucky, if I'm being honest. USC looked really good. I give them credit. I had Oregon. We both had Oregon, I think, in our Sweet 16s being Iowa. So we were pretty spot on there. USC looked awesome until they had to play Gonzaga. And then yeah, I think Oregon. I was looking at it every time I watched Oregon State. I felt like they got a team's worst game. Like Loyola Chicago was played so bad against them. I don't
Hmm.
really feel like Oregon State played great. I think Loyola played bad. And
Hmm.
they blew that game. But we have to talk about Oral Roberts here, a team that almost made it to the Elite Eight. They were this close, Matt, as a 15 seed. I don't know if it was more of a choke job by Arkansas. They did pull it off. But Oral Roberts had them pretty good that whole game and just couldn't hold on to it at the end. I feel like that was one of the biggest storylines of this whole tournament too. It just caps off a crazy 2021 year and a crazy 2021 March Madness.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think Max Abmas proved how good he was. Probably the best scorer in the country. Probably the most natural scorer in the country. Oral Roberts was fantastic. Probably the best 15 seed ever, especially in this tournament where it seemed like anything that could happen did happen. Oral Roberts, I would love to see him in the Elite Eight, maybe even the Final Four, but they did succumb to the pressure against Arkansas.
Yeah, I was really pulling for them, but they couldn't pull it off, which was a shame. But yeah, that definitely, I'm excited to watch this Final Four. Should be, on Saturday night. And then Monday night too, right after we film Penn State Sports Tonight, Matt. I don't know if you noticed, but we're gonna start a half hour earlier just so we can, get all of our stuff done. We don't skip shows for nothing, just like we don't skip episodes here on Ball Don't Lie. And we by any means necessary, even if I'm in a storage closet for crying out loud. Adversity builds character, ABC rule. But yeah, we'll be sure that I got you on that one, didn't I?
How do you have all these sayings, man? Like I don't understand how you just
Yeah,
have all these stored
I love
away.
my analogies, man. That's if you haven't learned anything from me, I love my analogies. Well, that one really wasn't much of an analogy, but I think that I just gotta pull the rabbit out the hat sometimes. I'm gonna tell you. Um, anyways, though, speaking of analogies and quotes, that's where we're gonna transition to here. For our All NBA team, All NBA favorite quotes team, I guess if you want to call it that. Me and Matt compiled some of the favorite sound bites we've, in our opinion, over the course of basketball history. I guess, Matt, I will let you go first. What was one of your favorite quotes and why?
Oh, this one's just an obvious one. If you're talking about the best quotes in NBA history, it's right up there. It's when Mike Breeden says "bang." Is there any phrase more iconic in the past 15 years of primetime basketball than when Mike Breeden lets out a good old bang? He only uses it in the biggest moments of the game, which is what makes the phrase and Breeden so special. Think of just about any iconic shot from the last 15 years, whether it be Kobe's buzzer beater against his Suns, Curry's half-court winner against the Thunder, or Ray Allen's series-saving three in the finals against the Spurs. Mike Breen has added his little catchphrase to that. That catchphrase and the way Breen says it makes all of those moments just that much better.
Yeah, I definitely that's a great one, Matt. And only one word. That's it.
Yep.
If you're quote one word. I was tempted to put that on there, but I did not, just because we did talk about Mike Breen last week. But you can never talk too much about Mike Breen at all. Next on my list, though, doesn't have much to do with basketball, but it came from an NBA player, and that's Matt Barnes. One of the funniest quotes I think I've ever heard in my life. Violence is never the answer, but sometimes it is. Now, this came from, the story I think we talked about here on Ball Don't Lie before, when Matt Barnes and Derek Fisher went at it. Matt Barnes, long story short, his ex-wife was dating Derek Fisher, who I believe they are now married. He did not know that. His sons were at his house. Matt Barnes drove over there and beat up Derek Fisher in front of everybody. And then after he was suspended from the NBA for a while and things like that, and as soon as he came back at the Memphis Grizzlies, I believe it was like a Saturday shoot-around, he said this quote, and I still to this day think is one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, honestly, Hunter, I did have that one on my list too because I thought it was hilarious. Violence is never the answer, but sometimes it is. I think that's awesome. And he also said in that press conference, about Derek Fisher that he asked if there would be confrontation between he and Fisher during the game, who was the coach of the New York Knicks at the time. He he said there wouldn't be any confrontation because, quote, he already took 1 L, so what's the point? Pretty incredible confidence from Matt Barnes there.
He did say that. I remember that too. That's, oh my God. That's really funny. I guess since you have him, I'll even it out here. Go my next one. It's gonna call this a two-parter because it came from two people here, but hear me out here. Shaq shared this story at Kobe's I guess publicized funeral memoriam, if you want to call it. And basically he told the story about how Kobe wasn't passing the ball a whole lot. What else is new? And Shaq had this really funny thing where he said that he sat Kobe down and said, "Hey, Kobe, there's no I in team, right?" And then Kobe goes, "Yeah, but there's an M-E in that, you know what." So I still think that is the funniest thing. Kobe, I could have literally made an all favorite quotes list of just him because he's got millions of them. But he was always so slick, one of the best trash talkers of all time. I just wonder if he always had that in the back of his head or he came up with that on the spot. Because if he did, that is some like next level stuff right there.
Yeah, Kobe, it just seems like he was on a different level when it came to trash talk, man, and he just knew that he was the best and he could do whatever the heck he wanted to do. And that quote reminds me so much of, I think it was a Michael Jordan quote where somebody told him there's no I in team, but he said there is in win. So I think Michael Jordan said that. And I think he added a couple expletives in there as well, just like Kobe did. But there's some classic quotes from two guys that quite literally were built different. They just thought differently than everybody else, and they were team players in some aspects, but in other aspects, they knew they were the best player on their team, and they knew they had to carry them.
Yeah, I think that literally that like story right there is Shaq and Kobe in a nutshell. Like that,
Yeah.
that is it. But yeah, built different, built for tough, whatever you want to say. Matt, what's another quote you had on your list?
So I think, you said the Matt Barnes one was probably the funnest one you've ever said. This one, I didn't know this one until today when I looked it up, but this is probably the funniest thing I've ever seen. So we all know the famous incident, the Malice at the Palace in 2004. It is the most famous brawl in sports history between the Indiana Pacers, the Detroit Pistons, and whoever Ron Artest could get his hands on in the stands. This was an incredible blemish on the NBA publicly, and they responded accordingly by suspending 9 combined players. Ron Artest was suspended for the rest of the 2004-2005 season, which is the longest suspension for any on-court incident in NBA history. Steven Jackson, who was also involved, also in the Pacers, was suspended for 30 games. There were even legal charges handed out to the 5 fans that were involved in sparking the incident, as well as 5 Indiana Pacers players. All of this backstory now leads me to what may be the dumbest and most hysterical comment ever made, now knowing what we know, especially in that context. After this incident, the 2 guys who received the harshest punishment were talking together, Ron Artest and Steven Jackson. Ron Artest turns to Steven Jackson and says, "Do you think we're going to get in trouble for this?"
Matt, I also had that on my list.
Oh
too.
my God.
Yeah, because that's like, I don't know if you've ever watched all the smoke. Shout out to Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes. Ironically, I guess they do deliver some of the best quotes in NBA history. Anyways, though, Steven Jackson talked about this. This is I forgot. I don't know what episode it was or anything like that. It is a must watch because Steven Jackson talking about it is the funniest thing. He's like, yeah. Rod just turns to me, and goes, "Do you think we're getting in trouble?" He's like, "Do you just see what we just did?" Like, oh God, that's crazy. We had two of the same ones on there.
Yeah, I mean that's just incredibly stupid. Like how
It's
like
hilarious.
short-sighted do you have to be? Like you just fist fought half the Pistons fans left in the stadium,
Ron Artest got
and you're
suspended like the whole season.
yeah. He's like, you think you're gonna get in trouble for this? Yeah, man. I think you're gonna get in trouble for especially when David Stern was still the commissioner of the NBA. Dude, he didn't let anything slide. Yeah, you're gonna get in trouble, Ron Artest.
Yeah, that's wrong place at the wrong time kind of comment. Yeah, I still think that's like the funniest thing. I had to put that on my list too because that one had me geeking quite a bit. Next on my list, I don't know if you're gonna have this, but I will. It's not necessarily a funny quote, but it's more so just like context of what came after it. So to paint the picture, LeBron James leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers, he has I guess like the decision. That's what they call it, the decision. It was live. It was nationally broadcasted. And then he said the famous quote, "I'm taking my talents to South Beach and I'm going to the Miami Heat." And that caused an entire wave. Basically, NBA Twitter was born that day when LeBron James said that. The forming of super teams was born that day. All the weight. You saw how nervous LeBron was. Dwayne Wade even says like the Heat don't even play in South Beach. Like, and he still said that anyway. So I just feel like for NBA context history, that's also like one of those like where you remember where you were moments when he said that kind of thing. So I definitely think that had to make my list just because of everything that kind of happened leading up to it, and then everything that happened post the decision announcement.
Yeah, I remembered exactly where I was. I was at the Jersey Shore on vacation with my family, laying in bed, and I read the ESPN bottom line because I had missed the decision. I saw that he went to the Heat, and that was obviously before phones, before we got updated with things. So that was crazy to me that he would go there. And also, the phrase "I'm taking my talents to South Beach" has now just been copied and replicated in every situation possible. We see people saying, "I'm taking my talents to somewhere," or even somewhere like a joke, like, "I'm taking my talents to this restaurant for dinner." So it's definitely sparked a movement, if you will.
It really has sparked a movement. That's one of my favorite quotes. So yeah, I and again, I remember I was too. I was in my kitchen. We have like this little old TV in there, and I was watching it off that. That's like you said, Matt. That's one of those like you remember where you were kind of moments. All right, what's next on your list though?
So I'll let you guess who said this one. The quote was, "I would never lift weights and train and stuff like that because that fill in the blank here was too heavy."
Oh, that's Allen Iverson.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah.
Despite often being the smallest player on the court, Iverson had a consistent lack of motivation to not only not lift weights, but have a now famous rivalry with practices. Iverson is a misunderstood legend of the game of basketball, and I will come to his defense at all times, unequivocally. Even though he never lifted weights, he clearly did not have to because he would just run circles around everyone or outshoot or outdrive everyone to the basket. I kind of agree with Allen Iverson, dude. Them Johns are pretty heavy.
Yeah, they really do be like that sometimes. I guess it's pretty funny because he was a football player too. So
Yeah.
you gotta lift weights if you play football, and honestly, basketball too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you talk about just one of the most naturally talented guys. I mean, again, like dude was a bucket, absolutely, and had a lot in his bag. But yeah, Allen Iverson. I mean, and then of course the practice quote and stuff like that too. I don't know if you had that on your list or not.
I did not.
Yeah, I thought you might have, so I didn't want to say it. But yeah, I'm glad you brought
Honestly,
that
I
up.
think
Definitely another
the
great quote.
practice. Yeah, I think the practice quote is like so overblown at this point. Like it's so like you can only beat a dead horse so many times. So I thought
Yeah.
honestly like this one was pretty funny. I thought that I would put this one on here as well.
Yeah, Allen Iverson, definitely someone who has so many like just quotable moments. But I think none bigger is Charles Barkley, and that is just gonna round out my list here.
Literally rounded out because he's so
Yeah, the
round.
round mound of rebound himself.
Yeah.
So I didn't know which one to pick, but I was kind of reading through some, and this one definitely caught my eye the most. He said, "quote The only difference between a good shot and a bad shot is if it goes in or not." That was like the funniest thing. I'm like, there's so many I could have put on this list. Like Charles Barkley again we could have done all Charles Barkley quotes But I thought that one was just so funny. It just shows how cut and dry Charles Barkley is in a nutshell, and just really kind of captivates who Charles Barkley is as a person and as a broadcaster.
Yeah, I think Charles Barkley, especially as a broadcaster, man, he just he thinks he says something that is like so smart, but it like you think about it and you're like, what does that mean? Like Charles, like, what are you talking about? No, duh. The difference between a good shot and a bad shot is the one that goes in. Like, shut up, Charles. But he is part of like one of the funniest pregame shows of all time, with Shaq and Kenny Jet Smith and Ernie Johnson. But he honestly does not add too much from a basketball perspective. He's more there for the humor.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about him, but in my opinion, like Charles Barkley changed the game of broadcasting completely. He made it like so. I don't know if casual is the right word, but like it made it like funny. Like you can be funny you can be yourself. I mean,
You could be a personality.
yeah. I mean, he quite literally can say whatever he wants. I don't think everyone has that luxury. He built that reputation for himself, I guess. But he kind of made it like, hey, like you can say what you mean and say it with your chest, So I definitely, respect him and what he does. I don't agree with a lot of things he says, but I respect it at the bare minimum. Did you have any other quotes? Was that all 5 for you?
I do have one more.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought you had one more on that list.
Yeah, so this one is just it's not really funny. It's just something that I have learned to love. So this one was an underrated one for a while, but it has started to pick up a little bit of steam recently because it's become more popular on Twitter and whatnot. So Hunter, just close your eyes and imagine this scene I'm going to set for you. The ESPN on ABC going to commercial music is playing. You probably know it. You see a player jumping and shooting in slow motion. Mark Jackson is just spewing out words that don't make a ton of sense in the context after just arguing with Jeff Van Gundy about the referees or some ridiculous rule change. But just when it feels like you're about to see the Charmin Ultra Soft Bear commercial, Jackson throws in a "Mama, there goes that man," and it fades to black. And that's what I imagine peak serotonin feels like, because when saying that is like the most, like, you got to feel like the best power trip ever. Just like, "Mama, there goes that man."
Very specific with the Charmin Ultra Shock reference. Oh my God, you really dug deep in your bag there. Holy oh my God.
I wanted to set the scene. I thought it was a good way to set the scene.
Yeah, you set the scene of like, Kobe hitting like a fadeaway, like
yeah, exactly. That's the exact music I was talking about. So you knew it. Mama, there goes that man.
Yeah, again, Mark Jackson is one of those other guys. I think we talked about it, on many podcasts. I think we literally had like a whole thing about a Mark Jackson quote. We went on like a 5-10 minute tangent about sandwiches. Like, I like Mark Jackson, low key national treasure. I don't like. We need to save this man and protect him at all costs. We cannot. No one can touch this guy. We need him and Jeff Van Gundy and Mike Breen. That trio. It's the only trio that really works in like any broadcasting booth. You need them 3 together. Absolutely.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. He wasn't that great of a coach. He was literally sitting on gold mine with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson's Warriors. But he is just so much better as a broadcaster. And like you said, he's great with Van Gundy, man. They just bicker about everything. It's so funny.
Yeah. Mark Jackson, he's with it too. Like, he knows what's going on in the world. So I always like that too. But anyways, though, that is going to wrap it up here on Ball Don't Lie. We covered a whole lot of ground today, like we always do. Like I said, by any means necessary, we got to get the job done. I'm still in the storage closet. Didn't want to get up and disrupt the peace, I guess. But appreciate you all tuning in. And be sure to check in next week, as always.
Mama, there goes that man.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.